Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Robin's Nest. So, if you're unfamiliar with motorsport.com, they are a motorsports news outlet similar to Racer. If you've watched NASCAR for any length of time, they had a deal with the NASCAR Heat, the last round of video games. And they had a partnership deal with them, so that their sponsor logos appeared in game. So if you're a gamer and you're into motorsports, you're familiar with them. If not, it's just another motorsports outlet. But they post on X all the time. They'll post things like, it's just engagement farming is what they're doing. They'll post a number and they'll say which driver comes to mind when you think of this number, so on and so forth. With the announcement that Porsche is leaving WEC, the hypercar program at least is leaving, they posted an image of the Porsche badge and they said, who comes to mind when you see this? And I like to troll a little bit, not like full on troll these people, but kind of poke a little tongue in cheek basically. But is legitimately what I think of when I hear Porsche, just straight off the top of my mind, is Nazi Germany. Because for those unfamiliar, Adolf Hitler, I think it's Ferdinand Porsche, I think is his name. It's one of the Porsche family members. He conscripted him to develop the VW Beetle. Back in the day, it was going to be the people's car, which was a colossal failure out of the gate. Now, the car itself, the Beetle, ended up being successful later on, but the initial purpose of the car, the people's car, a cheap, efficient way for Germans to get around, particularly given that the Autobahn was brand new. And like I said, it ended up being a failure. But a lot of people forget that the Porsche family had a lot to do. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure his name was Ferdinand. I could be wrong on that. But anyways, he was a member of the Nazi Party. And so it was a no-brainer for Hitler to get him to design and build this car. And they ended up later on, creating the Porsche car company itself. I think they had the company existed prior to their first car launch. But anyway, I don't know all the specific details. I just know the general concept of everything that went down back then. But a lot of people forget that Hitler was really into motorsports. I'm not saying any of this to brag about him at all. I'm just saying these are just historical facts. He was really keen on motorsports. With Auto Union, which is Audi, and Mercedes back in the day. A lot of historians say it was for propaganda. The more successful that the motorsports program was, the more that he could say, well, Germany's superior on every front compared to everyone else. But of course, that's no different than what any country has done before or since. If the U.S. wins something in the Olympics, typically the government, everybody brags about it for a while. It's just one of those things. It comes with the territory with sports. If you have your nation represented, it's always a big deal. Look at Formula One. When Lewis wins at Britain and Silverstone, it's a huge freaking deal, and they talk about it for a long time and brag about it and so on and so forth. It's just natural. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just what, I wouldn't even call it propaganda. It's just national pride to a certain extent. And again, I'm not saying anything positive about Hitler or anything like that. I'm just saying basic facts that a lot of people forget, because when I made that post, I posted a picture of him standing there with Porsche going over designs of the VW Beetle. And it had some people DM me, like, how dare you share something? It's history, okay? Just because I'm posting a picture of something that happened back in the day doesn't mean that I'm endorsing the people in the picture, okay? It's just history. And we've gotten to this point where everyone is afraid. Like, if you see a swastika, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Okay, it's just history. It's what happened. Whether we like it or not, no matter how evil it was or not, you can talk about it, okay? You can look at images of people. It's not even images of death or anything like that. It's just images of people standing around talking about a car. Okay, if you can't stomach that in 2025, or something that happened in the 30s and 40s, I don't know what to tell you. But I'm not going to shy away from talking about history, automotive industry in particular, and their history, because some people on the internet get their feelings hurt. So don't DM me complaining about a picture from Nazi Germany that you don't like. Okay? You don't like it, scroll past it. It's as simple as that. So anyways, I just want to get that off my chest because it was annoying that I woke up this morning and I had DMs over a stupid picture, that's in history books. I mean, readily available out there on the internet, everywhere. Outside of the social media outlets that don't allow you to share stuff like that, like YouTube and like Facebook, but X, you can post that stuff. And it should, like I said, it shouldn't be controversial because it's just history. Not condoning anyone, endorsing anyone, or saying that I agree with anything, whatever. It's just history. So let's put our big boys and girls britches on and just look at it, move past it. If you don't want to look at it, just keep going. It's as simple as that. So anyways, let's get into the rest of the video. If you enjoy listening to me ramble about motorsports cars, anything like that, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications. If you're interested in diecast cars, t-shirts, hats, auto parts, anything like that, check out our eBay. The link is in the description. Follow me on Facebook, X, Facebook, post racing stuff for the most part. X, we do political stuff and racing. So forewarning if you follow me on X. So let's get into it. So we're a couple, well, I mean, we're only a few days away from the new NASCAR game dropping. And, you know, much like everything else NASCAR nowadays, I want to be excited, but like I'm not overly optimistic based on what I've seen and what I've heard. Straight off the top, the fact that it's going to be digital only is not a good sign. That means that the budget was not, well, I mean, obviously it's not going to be a huge budget because it's a NASCAR title, and that's nowadays is a niche market. So it's, you know, they're not going to spend a ton of money on it. I don't think they've ever really spent a ton of money on NASCAR video games in context with other, you know, blockbuster titles and stuff like that, like Grand Theft Auto. But you know, the digital part of it is makes me nervous. And then what I've seen, you know, they waited a really, really, really long time to give us actual gameplay footage. You know, I think it was, what, 2 weeks ago we finally got real footage. That's just not a good sign either when you're this close to launch and you're just now showing us gameplay footage. I don't really get that. You know, I don't keep up with the video game industry as much as what I used to. You know, when I was younger, before I started having kids, I played a lot more than what I do now. But it's just odd to me because I remember when I was growing up, you'd have, you know, like E3. You'd hear stuff about games. You'd see gameplay footage like a year or two before it was actually released. Now, I understand that iRacing only got the license, what, a year ago? Maybe a little bit more than that. And so their back's kind of been up against the wall trying to get this thing rushed out because a year development time is not a lot. And so, you know, one of the gameplay clips that I saw was a car had a bunch of rear end damage but was still leading at, I believe it was Daytona. And the cars just kind of looked like they didn't look like they were in the track, if that makes sense. It just kind of looked like it was floating across the track. Now, I understand that when you play the game, you look at the gameplay footage, the car is actually, it's on the track, okay? But the feel just looks like, and I could be wrong, but the feel looks like the car's just not in the track, like it's on a cloud, basically, even though it is on the track. But that's one of the main things about NASCAR games that they've had issues with over the past few years is just getting the physics right. And these cars basically handle like tanks. And so you've got to get that somewhere in the ballpark, I would think. And it's interesting because if you remember back in the day with Papyrus, when the team that makes iRacing is essentially the same team from Papyrus that made the NASCAR racing games for the PC back in the day. But if you'll think back to the 90s, they also made a PS1, a console game. It's called NASCAR Racing, and I think it came out in like 96, 97. And it was essentially a port from the PC version of NASCAR Racing over to the PlayStation. And stripped down, obviously, a lot because it's a console game, not a PC game. And it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. I remember when I was a kid playing it thinking that it was terrible. I mean, when I say stripped down, there was nothing there. Like, nothing. It was just a bare bones, barely functional video game. And that has me nervous about what's coming down the line with this, with it essentially being the same crew. Not exactly, but essentially being the same crew from what was Papyrus back in the day. Is it going to be similar to that? Is this going to be a stripped down, bare bones version of iRacing, essentially? I don't know that. I hope that's not the case. And I hope, I hope the game is really good. I understand. I get. Okay, I've heard people talk about it. I complain about NASCAR all the time. I know this. And I really don't want to. I really don't want to. I want to say something positive. So I hope that when this game comes out, it's fantastic, blows everybody away, and it's one of the best NASCAR console games that's come out in a very long time, because NASCAR Heat was okay, but it had a lot of problems. A lot of problems. It was a functional game, and yeah, if you suspended your disbelief for a little bit, I mean, you could get into it, but the physics were when you hit the wall and the car comes to a dead stop, even if you're scrubbing along, that kind of stuff just was an issue for me, and it had some glitches. I played it not super long ago and made it through my rookie season in Xfinity, and I was doing trucks at the same time. And got to the end of the season, did not win the championship, but got awarded the championship anyways. So obviously had a glitch. But I don't know, like I said, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it turns out to be great. What's not looking great, by the way, is the court case. Now, this is another thing I could be wrong about because it hasn't completely flushed out yet. And hopefully I am. But the judge in the court case with NASCAR 2311 and Front Row has sent both of them back to the drawing table in mediation. Okay, they're wanting NASCAR and 2311 and Front Row to come to a settlement, basically. And NASCAR is pushing that hot and heavy. And I think the reason being is that they stand a really good chance of actually losing the court case. I know that's saying a lot because NASCAR's got endless amounts of money. They can pay off any lawyer. They can do whatever they want. Everyone who's fought them in court has lost. Look at Mayfield. The guy with the LGB coin that was going to sponsor Brandon Brown, he just lost his court case with NASCAR a couple of days ago. And he was suing them since they wouldn't allow him to sponsor Brandon's car. It cost him a bunch of money. And I agree with him, just on a ethics basis that it was bogus that they wouldn't allow him to sponsor Brandon. But they didn't. And yeah, you can imagine they probably lost quite a bit of money out of that. But he lost the court case because NASCAR's got more money. But with the 2311 in Front Row, what I'm nervous about, I don't want them to settle. I want it to go to court because I feel like the only way that any reasonable, long-term, substantial change is going to happen in NASCAR is if they lose this court case. That's the only way, because if they go in there and they settle, NASCAR is just going to go straight back to its old ways. There's never going to be any compromise or anything like that. And then what happens if down the road, if they have nothing in writing saying that they won't do X, Y, and Z? What's to stop them from going back and doing exactly the same thing in the next negotiation period for the charter agreement? But it's not even, to me, it's not even so much the charter agreement, although that is a huge issue, but the monopoly part of it, I think, extends far and wide to look at the racetracks that NASCAR owns. Basically any major oval in the United States that's worth racing on, any big oval, NASCAR owns, for the most part. There's no series out there that's a direct competitor with NASCAR. The last one that existed was ARCA, and they bought ARCA. So there's no competition. The Cars Tour is not a competition for NASCAR. Okay? Not even close. Yeah, it's a better series, for sure. But it's not a competitor. So I don't, I'm nervous. I don't want there to be a settlement. I want this to go through because I honestly believe that 2311 and Front Row have a really good chance at defeating NASCAR in court. And I think the judge knows that, which is why the judge wants NASCAR and the teams to settle before it goes to court. Like I said, I'm sorry, call me what you will, but I don't believe anything that really comes out of the judicial system's mouth at this point. After what we've seen over the past few years, what we've seen this past week, just because you've got a robe on doesn't mean that you're some beacon of truth and honesty and prosperity. Doesn't mean that. Half the time they abuse their power. Okay? So, I don't want to say something to get me in trouble, but that's just how I feel about it. I hope that they go through with it. Speaking of NASCAR, though, they also announced that they're not going to investigate any race manipulation from this weekend. Cole Custer apparently caught Joey Logano at the end of the Cup race and refused to pass him. He had a faster car. Caught him with no problem. There's onboard footage. You can see that he went to pass him at one point and jumped on the brakes and backed off and deliberately didn't pass him. And that was due to where everything was going to fall in the finishing order with the playoffs and so on. And blatant manipulation. But NASCAR said, well, we're not going to investigate it. Which I wasn't surprised about that because the truck race, and I've talked about this already, but the truck race Friday was, to me, even more of an egregious example of race manipulation. And NASCAR's response was, what? What's going on over there? Oh, we didn't see anything. We were picking our nose while that happened. We didn't see anything. Yeah, when it's so blatantly obvious that something was going on, but, NASCAR at this point, there's enough blowback against their playoff system that they're going to do any and everything they can to keep it. They don't want to get rid of it. Okay? They don't want to. The TV partners don't want to. They don't want it to go anywhere. They want to keep playoffs in some shape, form, or fashion. If they were to come out today and say there was race manipulation Friday and Sunday, the amount of blowback that they would receive towards the playoffs would be crippling. It would be massive. And they don't want that. So basically, don't believe our lying eyes is what they're telling us. Nothing happened this weekend. Everything was on the up and up. They want to keep this format so bad. I just that's the thing that makes no sense to me is they had 1.5 million people watch the Roval, which was up, 100,000 from the week prior. Not good. Not good numbers. Adam Stern, a reporter, covers NASCAR, he came out and he said, well, there's no direct comparison for this weekend's race from last year because last year was on NBC, this year is on USA. As if that makes any kind of difference. But even excluding that, okay, let's just take that at face value. You can't compare the two's numbers. You can't compare this past weekend and last year's. Okay, doesn't matter though, because 1.5 million is awful. That is awful. I mean, it does not matter if last year got 1.7 million or if last year got 2.4 million. It doesn't matter because 1.5 is just awful. And that's a cutoff race. So you saw a slight uptick from the week prior, but you still are not even sniffing 2 million. And the stuff about USA makes no sense to me because, like I've said before, there's other programs that come on USA that have gotten more views. That I don't buy into that nonsense. And thankfully, the football argument has basically died because that you can shoot holes in that all day long. So, but we're gonna sacrifice the integrity of our sport to keep a point system that is not moving the needle in a positive direction in the slightest, which is just baffling to me. I will never understand it. I will never understand it. You have blatant race manipulation, but we're going to ignore that so we don't have to change our playoff format. You know, there was more interest in guys running each other over for 18th than focus on the leader, the guy who won the race. We were more concerned with guys in 18th running each other over, coming to the start-finish line, than the winner of the race. Just let that sink in for a second. That's insanity. It's not legitimate, and furthermore, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. It's just not. This dive off a cliff that NASCAR's done this year will only intensify. It will only intensify unless something drastic changes. And with Jim France at the helm, the two Steves right next to him, it's not going to anytime soon. It's not going to get any better. You know, at this point, I'd take Brian France back in a heartbeat. And he was awful. But anyways, if you enjoy listening to me ramble about motorsports, cars, whatever, literally whatever I feel like talking about, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications. Check out our eBay if you're interested in diecast cars, t-shirts, hats, auto parts, anything like that. The link is in the description. Follow me on Facebook and X for more motorsports content. Outside of that, thank y'all for watching. Till next time, we'll see you. Have a good day. God bless. Peace.